Let's talk about youth crime, specifically youth crime in Queensland, and an idea that looks like it is going to work and it is going to move from a trial phase to semi-permanent. Now, a decision has been made and laws have now been passed through the Queensland Parliament that, yes, kids as young as 10 are going to end up being fitted with ankle bracelets. It made some headlines today.
Children as young as 10 could be shackled with ankle monitors.
Courts can order a child as young as 10 years old to wear one of these ankle monitors.
Now, in some of the reporting in all of this, and I'll get to this a little bit later, there's, of course, great emphasis about how young the kids are, and again, terms like shackled makes it seem like, well, anyone who looks at a police officer the wrong way is the one that will end up being 24/7 monitored. You know that's not the case, and that is why the Premier says it's an option. It's not guaranteed, it's not definite that every person of that age who goes before a court, but when somebody's got a bit of a long list of offending, you've got to keep an eye on them. And that's what the Premier is planning to do.
Our heart is in bail reform, and this is the first of further reforms that will be coming to make sure that there are consequences for people who don't comply with that. I've spoken about what solving the youth crime crisis looks like to us. It is more police, it's early intervention, it's rehabilitation, it's making sure that at every element there is an opportunity to make sure that we can turn a young person's life around.
Now, all of the usual civil liberties groups, human rights people are saying this is a horrible and draconian thing to do, what a terrible sign of a society that's lost its way. But guess what? If you know where people whom have been charged of crimes, who may well have committed previous crimes, if you can have an eye on them 24/7, guess what happens? The likelihood of them going on to commit further offences while waiting for the court process to play out has fallen as a result of those ankle monitors. Here's some of the details which are around today. The trial found that devices led to a positive outcome for recidivism, meaning 24% reduction in the likelihood of offending, 26% reduction in offences occurring that involve victims. So again, basically, a quarter of the people who have this on them don't commit more crime while they are currently going through the revolving door of the youth justice system. The devices also led to reduced time in youth custody, with individuals wearing bracelets spending 28 days less in custody than previous 3 months. The report noted that the devices were most successful in reducing recidivism when individuals were engaged with other wraparound bail support services designed to assist youth offenders. And that's the point. Now, again, all of us want to make sure that kids that have gone right off track do not end up going to criminal TAFE and staying inside jails until eventually they learn no other way of life. We want to make sure that the kids who end up being sent to detention are the ones who have committed serious crimes. But the reality is that the only people whom this will affect are people who have been found to have committed a string of offences that are longer than your arms. And that is amazing to say while we are talking about some kids in Queensland by the age of 10. As the father of a 10-year-old, the concept of my child committing a crime, let alone someone their age have been committing so many crimes that jail becomes an option, or that they could be involved in serious crimes where jail is the only option because of how serious the crimes are, in part is because there are very few options between the slap on the wrist or the slam of the jail cell behind them. We need to develop as many steps as possible, not to weaken down the justice system, but to make sure that there are options. If knowing where kids who are right on the edge are 24/7 is the option for some of them, then it seems like it is the best option. What's also good is that we looked around today for somebody on camera that was willing to talk against these choices. We couldn't find them anywhere. It doesn't mean that people don't disagree with some of it, that there aren't some grumblings from some parts of the community on the philosophical level, but because the evidence shows that it's not just a spoonful of cement and a kick in the backside, but an actual solution to part of the youth crime problem in Queensland, well, perhaps that's why They either weren't brave enough or they weren't stupid enough to get in front of a camera today to talk down what seems to be a good idea. Yet again, confirmation that Queensland made the right decision when last year they changed the government from one that talked about this garbage as something that they would be able to fix, that being youth crime, to one that is actually trying everything they can, including with dedicated ministers. I like this. Again, before I get to the obvious and what you expect me to talk about tonight, there's another hit coming for the retirees of this country. For people who might have a house that they own, but of course, because they live in it, there is no money that comes from it. They, of course, could be the self-funded retirees who are leaving 4/5 of bugger all pressure on the system, or people who may well be getting some sort of a pension where, of course, your constant worry is how many hours can I work, how much money can I have in the bank, how much is the house particularly worth? Well, all of that matters. Well, there's a thing called deeming rates, where essentially calculations are done about how many assets that you have and about how much access that gives you to the welfare system via an age pension, carer's pension, etc., etc. But a decision was made during the pandemic times to make sure that people on these fixed incomes, be they the people who are getting it out of their super fund because they were able to amass it during their life, or the people who hang on to every single cent when it comes to the pension. In fact, this is not a dark remnants of the COVID era. It is one that just last year the Treasurer was saying was important, which was to freeze deeming rates, to essentially make life just that little bit easier for people in the back nine of their life.
We're also continuing the freeze on social security deeming rates.
Well, guess what's happening? They are changing the rules. The freeze is over, and as you know, as we reported a little earlier this year, that these things are now making their way up. An initial increase of 0.5%, so yes, it's a small change, but still important. This meant that it apparently saved the budget $1.8 billion. Why? Because that's $1.8 billion in help for self-funded or pension-related retirees that didn't need to be paid out, meaning the retirees of Australia $1.8 billion poorer. The government cited the end of the inflation crisis as the reason to move on. Previously, it had kept the rates at COVID levels to help with post-pandemic cost of living crisis. Well, last time I checked, inflation is a massive problem now. Cost of living, well, did it ever go away? And the people most affected by it are those on those fixed incomes. Now, we got another report that inflation is now the highest that it's been in the best part of 12 months, and it's in a scenario where, because everything costs more, the small amount of money that you are locked into goes, well, less than it ever has. And it may well get worse. Why? Because the inflation genie is out of the bottle. The government's little paper over Band-Aid solution when it came to power bills is going to disappear. Power bills will increase anyway, but they're also going to, in all of these metrics, overperform in their increases because of the artificial way they were being held back for the past couple of years. In fact, inflation is now such an issue that there is no plan for a rate cut anytime soon, and there is a even money chance of a rate rise next year.
Headline inflation is very much swung around by the on and off of the electricity rebates, and we're not expecting headline inflation to come back down below 3 for another 12 months effectively.
Well, guess what? The news that has broken today is that it's happening again. It's not just the one that took place a little earlier this year. There is going to be another one next year, and it won't just be once a year. Pensioners with assets are set to be hit with a second successive time. You'll cop this in March with the government confident of an increase in the deeming rate, despite the outsourcing of a decision to an independent body, because, of course, this government, well, doesn't want to own any crappy decisions. They pretend, oh, it's all arm's length. Who pays them? Oh, the government, meaning you still control them? Yeah, that's the case. The government has also decided that the deeming rate, which had been frozen at record lows for years, was increased last September, will be adjusted every September and every March. So again, what little money you have, they are going to put you back through the ringer as if there was no inflation, as if we were still where we were 4 years ago. This will be on the same day as pension indexation to inflation, ensuring that the impact of any increase to the deeming rate will be masked by an increase to the pension. Now, of course, what this really means is that if previously holding on to the deeming rates and freezing them was costing the budget money, by letting it go up, it means it's not costing as much, meaning who pays? You. Is it going to be the difference between you being able to have the power on or not? I don't know. I certainly think that it is going to be yet another financial concern for lots of people. Your circumstances will be very specific, and whether or not those increases to the pension, which happen annually, are going to mask all of this. But of course, the reality is that if your home is worth more every 12 months than it was in the previous 12 months, well, then you know how the system starts to turn and fiddle. Deeming rates are a one-size-fits-all estimate of the income people earn on their financial assets, such as property and term deposits, because God forbid you were saving money, which affect the calculations for their social security payments, including the age pension, job seeker and parenting payments. Why politically is it okay to start coming after people who have already paid tax all their life? Why is it politically okay for the deeming rates, which were a virtue when the government was freezing them, to now not be a problem when they are going to increase in the space of 18 months, not once, not twice, but 3 times, 2 Septembers and a March? Well, because much of the media only has one view of people of a certain age, and you know how insulting that view can be.
Okay, boomer.
The boomer generation values of like baby boomers, the first thing that I think of is kind of just the whole like hard work gets you pretty much anywhere mindset, and I just feel like that's so toxic.
Toxic, right? You're watching us right now because of the hard work that you put in life. To be able to be sitting exactly where you are right now, to be able to be watching us as you are right now, from the house you're in to the chair you're sitting on. Oh, no, that's all toxic logic, please. Again, before I get to the obvious, some other things that are across the desk tonight. I want to talk about some snobbery around people who live on the fringes of our major cities, but specifically in Melbourne. Now, I know many people watch us there, and it is a beautiful city. We love, of course, the mayor, but we know there's a lot of problems that happen in Melbourne right now. But a perfect example, right? Now, again, forgive me if I don't get my pronunciations 100% right. But, of course, in Fitzroy, the median house price is $1.5 million. Why? Because it's really close to the city. Craigieburn, much further out, a little closer to the airport. Not quite Sunbury, but you know what I'm talking about here. The median house price, $690,000. Now, no doubt the people in Fitzroy, yes, mega lefties, but still comfortable, love their kids just like everyone else, as do the people in Craigieburn and everywhere else. But what about this thing that I've been meaning to get to all week from The Age? The $265 million commute, how urban sprawl is costing Melbourne. So I thought, upon the headline, well, this has all got to be about tolls, right? And the cost of running a vehicle and the registration and the petrol, and that's what the $265 million is, right? Oh, no. It's all about climate change. Melburnians in outer suburb areas generate 14 times more carbon emissions than those in the inner city that are well served by public transport. Can you believe how arrogant this is? Now, again, we live where we live, in part by choice, but most of us by circumstance. And if you can live a minute away from work, then good on you. If work is all over the city and you choose to live somewhere so you can get a bigger joint a little further out from town, great. Or if the one on the fringe of the city is the one that you can afford, then great. You've made that house your home and you'll be celebrating Christmas with family and friends. But again, the idea that the leftier, the voter, the woker, the suburb, all has to do with climate change, when remember, we as an entire country, everything from mining to transport to cows farting is 1% of the world's climate problem. Again, we read on. Providing better links between public transport, housing and jobs would cut emissions by 80%, according to the new Monash University research. Well, geez, thanks, Scoop. If people had houses closer to their work and therefore they had a train that dropped them off at the front door, wouldn't this be great? But in cities of millions of people, that's not going to happen. Yes, the suburban rail loop, which is already costing way too much money, well, that is going to open up more people's access to public transport. But some people need to understand that one of the reasons people own cars is because their families live on the other side of town and they don't want to catch a bus, tram or anything else to go and see them. God forbid they want to go and do their own shopping. Not everything is dropped off at the front door. One more par and then we're done. The average Melburnian contributes 21 cents per weekday to the cost of climate change, but the amount varies widely from 4 cents in parts of Carlton or Docklands, so right in the heart of the city, with the best public transport and walking connections, and 58 cents in Bacchus Marsh. Emissions generated during weekday trips around Greater Melbourne add up to $333 million a year in climate change costs, which include things like flood damage and treating respiratory illnesses. Really? We are now blaming the floods on the people who don't live as close to the city as the people who vote Green. Again, how is this a surprising study that, yes, a little more effort is put in to move from one part of the city to the other, but the idea that, well, everything should be exactly the way that it is in Fitzroy, please. What rubbish. This, of course, could all be cut to $68 million if everything goes the way that the researchers wish it to be. I see a snobbishness in all of this coverage. I see a snobbishness about attitudes to people when it comes to age, ageism, having a go at people over a certain age, not giving them a job, pretending they're part of yesterday's political conversation. Ageism is the one ism that they're allowed left. And the snobbish attitude that the only people who matter are the decision makers in the city and the taxpayers in the suburbs tells you everything you need to know about much of the ruling class, both in the media and in academia. So let's talk now about the Minister for Freebies and the Prime Minister who loves a freebie. Upgrade Albo, unsurprisingly, is hardly going to be cracking down on some of the garbage that we've all seen in the past couple of weeks.
$1,200 for a government comcar to wait almost 10 hours while Miss Wells watched the NRL Grand Finals, and $1,000 to wait 7 hours at the Australian Open Tennis. Also rushing to declare free tickets, including to an Oasis concert, adding to her $95,000 trip to New York, $2,800 family ski trip, $4,000 for the cricket, Paris Olympics, $116,000.
Yeah, I mean, it is outrageous, right? Oh, but she's not as big a spender as somebody else and there's a gendered angle to it, please. Now, the Prime Minister says, well, exactly what we said. Monday, she declared it all. Tuesday, she investigated herself. Wednesday, we introduced the social media ban, and they're talking about it as being something that we'll all be as proud of as the gun reforms post-Port Arthur. Might be the case. Might be something that the rest of the world looks to us positively about. But make no mistake, all of that focus is about trying to take your attention away from clearly the rort that is the Minister for Freebies, the one who's got so many free tickets that she's got tickets on herself. Here's part of how he tried to change the subject today, because he was frankly annoyed that the story has continued into as many days as it has.
But we have an independent authority. I'm going to allow them to do their job.
Well, these are rules that have been set for some period of time. We haven't changed the rules. For 83 years, our parliament elected what were largely older, male, all male, every seat, Labor, Liberal, Country Party, UAP, Protectionist, every single electorate in New South Wales elected a bloke.
Sorry, what? I mean, again, this idea of trying to use gender as some sort of, emotional shield is rubbish. It is about the proverbial being taken by a person who is paid way more than the average Australian, who is paid by the average Australian, who has the power to rule over the average Australian, showing no restraint whatsoever. She may well be entitled to, but the whole point is that you have to make your choices about how much of it you do or don't take. But as we know, the protection racket is there for many people in the media. It's there, of course, from the Prime Minister, who can never admit. Don't you love how Trumpian this is? At what point has this bloke ever admitted a mistake as Prime Minister? Every minister's fine, the ones caught lying, the ones caught rorting, the ones caught screwing over our national security. No one ever has to pay a penalty for what they promised in opposition but failed to deliver in government. They have the balls to turn around and say that the inflation genie's back in the bottle while we know that things are getting tight. The support that apparently was absolutely urgent when it came to pensioners or power bills now all mysteriously disappears. Why? Because they got what they wanted, which was to get back onto the gravy train and to be there for another 3 years. And the Prime Minister got tetchy today. Why? Because normally a pretty compliant, pretty obedient media who have been very soft on this bloke, who never want to rock the boat, well, ever so slightly, the boat was rocked today, and he doesn't like it. Why? Because he's got a glass jaw. And part of his anger is trying to send a message to the people and any people around him that this is not a story, do not displease me. If you displease me, then I won't be doing interviews with you anymore, and our office won't be getting back to you when you call, which will cause trouble for you and your bosses back at the variety of newsrooms around the country.
I've answered multiple questions on it today.
And there's been
I am focused. I am focused. What I have said very clearly is what I am focused on. I'm focused on one of the biggest reforms. When you look back, and you know, you'll be able to write a book maybe on, you know, the period of the Labor government. When you look back and you look at what are the 5 biggest things that we did, I tell you what, this will be one of them, and that's what makes me proud. Thanks very much.
Sorry,
Thanks.
you did say that you'd come to me.
I mean, again, this trick, right, which is, remember, oh, Daniel Andrews, isn't he amazing because he did 120 press conferences? Yeah, but how many lies did he tell in them? How many lies by omission? Well, I've answered many questions on this. Sorry, is there a limit to how many we're allowed to ask you, sir? Now, of course, what will happen is he'll disappear for the next couple of days. Why? Because, well, the cricket's going to start up soon enough. It'll be the weekend. Then a lot of people will put the queue in the rack next week, the week after. So I wouldn't be expecting a wall-to-wall appearance by the Prime Minister anytime soon. And of course, Annika Wells, well, the defenders in the media who are out there still pushing, even to this very minute, the agenda of things, then this thing on some levels will begin to burn out. And hypocrisy is not something that, generally speaking, scares too many politicians because, frankly, they are just as shameless as their political opponents, who they often accuse of being shameless. And a lot of people have said, well, the Prime Minister's never really invoked the pub test as a way of criticising things in the past, so therefore invoking the pub test against the Minister would not be a good idea. Except, guess what he's done? Exactly that. This was all back to do with Christian Porter and when they were trying to keep that alive because, remember, the Liberal Party had a problem with women, despite the fact, of course, Anthony Albanese steamrolled a woman to become the leader of the party, despite the fact that their treatment of Kimberley Kitching, their treatment of Linda Reynolds, all the rest of it, right? Well, it doesn't pass the pub test. It's time this minister understood that being a cabinet minister requires transparency. This is the bloke who's trying to make it harder for you to get freedom of information laws. Fair dinkum, the one who wanted to censor the internet. This is precisely the sort of issue that undermines confidence in our political system. Well, what do you think? The minister's taking the proverbial like she has ever since she's become a minister. From the first time she went to the Melbourne Cup all the way through to today. Fair dinkum. The Prime Minister once said the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. This was a way of owning Scott Morrison. Well, right back at you, pal. Right back at you, pal. Now, again, can we also put away this rubbish that, oh, it's an arm's length system and we're nothing to do with it? The arm's length system is only around because of the empowering legislation that means it happens. Nothing in government is beyond the purview of the Parliament to change. Perhaps the judiciary, obviously, but the judiciary can be slightly hemmed in by minimum sentencing or sentencing guidelines or new laws. But yes, it's an independent branch of our government, But the public service is, of course, a functionary of the elected government. And a system like this about how deep the gravy train is, or how long the gravy train is, and how deep the trough is, well, that is a decision made by the Parliament. So is the Prime Minister planning to walk the walk, to be more transparent, to make sure that this is not the sort of issue that undermines the confidence in our political system? What do you reckon?
The rules are established. We have the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority for a reason.
So you and other people can hide behind the idea that no matter how much you rack up, oh, somebody else. Oh, independent. Oh, did I get 4 pay rises since becoming Prime Minister? Oh, and the ministers and the MPs and the opposition. The whole show. Is the tax burden on the average Australian going up? Yes. Are the deeming rates being frozen? No. Are the little help that they have supposedly said was a difference when it comes to power bills? No. You notice their lives never get worse. Their lives never get tougher. And we can now add, I work really hard, to the list of the passive-aggressive ways that the future Prime Minister, Annika Wells, because you can see her backers who are backing her in now. Well, now we can add that to the list of silly things that she has said in defence of herself. Again, for those who don't remember.
I really do work very hard and try my best.
Or, of course, the reason why she's not responsible for the things that a minister is responsible for.
I'm still a new minister to the industry, so I would say I'm listening to everybody at the moment.
Or why you don't actually have to answer a question if you don't like the question that is asked, despite the fact that we're really open and transparent and so much better than those guys.
I've answered your question.
Now, while all of this takes place, there was a report which came out today, which I bet you didn't hear about on the 6 p.m. news. Why? Because, like Channel 9 last night, what about that? Not 1, not 2, but three packages on the social media ban. And then, of course, the reporting in and around with this, which was about trying to look the other way. We got some numbers about the number of people who have lost their job. In November, full-time employment down by a football stadium. Part-time up. Once you put the numbers together, 21,300 people lost their job last month. This person who should have lost their job this month, the Minister for Freebies, nothing to see here. Oh, yeah, and about 3 million Australians don't have enough work. Oh, but she worked really hard. For 12 consecutive months, the number of Australians that are either jobless or underemployed has totalled more than 3 million, according to a new study. Market research company Roy Morgan has crunched the figures on people out of work seeking more employment over the past year and found the Australian economy is struggling to create jobs. The Roy Morgan estimates for the last month show that overall unemployment and underemployment has now increased another football stadium of people to 3.3 million people. So, yeah, one of the reasons why we keep talking about it, no matter what the excuse, is while you, Minister, like to say,
I really do work very hard and try my best.
about 3.3 million people don't have enough work to pay the bills. But we've turned the corner and everything's okay. Move on to the next thing. No, we'll stay focused on this no matter how much it annoys them. Not because it annoys them, but because somebody's got to say it matters. And I know that's how you feel.